force is meant to deter regional actors, namely Iran and Lebanon's Hezbollah, from widening the war. Last week, the U.S. deployed a separate carrier to international waters off Israel's coast. Back in Washington, D.C., U.S. President Joe Biden was heckled by a pro-Palestinian protester while discussing the situation in Gaza. Take a look.
Well, look. I can't hear her. What's she saying? Well, thank you. Whatever you're saying, I'm going to say thank you. I can't hear you.
Let's go live now to Heidi Jo Castro's in Washington, D.C. for us. As we saw there, Joe Biden being heckled by that pro-Palestinian protester. Is he likely to face more pressure, particularly from his younger support base, over America's stance with Israel?
Marlene, yes, and in fact, Biden already is. Just on Saturday, there were 55 members of the U.S. House of Representatives who sent him a letter along with Secretary of State Antony Blinken, calling for the two to urge Israel to follow international law in its response to Hamas in not inflicting widespread harm to civilians. Now, this was a letter that was signed by a number of House Democratic progressives, but notably it was also joined by a few Democratic moderates who signed this letter as well. And it was a sign that in this Congress that has really come out in favor of Israel, there are some voices of dissent emerging, though I have to note that this letter also unequivocally condemned, in its words, the terrorist attacks from Hamas upon Israeli civilians. But we are seeing more and more of this sentiment in pockets around the U.S., including at some protests. There was one notable one in New York in front of the home of the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, who's about to lead a delegation to Israel from Congress. And this protest was held by progressive Jewish groups in the U.S., and it resulted actually in about a dozen arrests, including rabbis as well as the descendants of Jewish Holocaust survivors. That protest in front of Chuck Schumer's home in New York was to protest what they call the genocide of Palestinians in Gaza.
And now we have reports of a second U.S. aircraft carrier entering the region. Is this an attempt at some kind of deterrence?
Absolutely, and this is something that we had been expecting. This is the Dwight D. Eisenhower aircraft carrier, which was already scheduled to deploy to that region. It's on its way there already. And today, on Saturday rather, came the official confirmation from the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, that part of this mission will be to go to the Eastern Mediterranean in response to this conflict. And of course, its ultimate purpose there is to deter this conflict from widening. It's a message to Hezbollah in Lebanon as well as Iran to not get involved in this any further than they have. And of course, it's joining the first U.S. aircraft carrier, the Gerald R Ford, that is in that region for the same purpose already.
Make sure to subscribe to a channel to the latest news from RDZ World News.